All right, guys, welcome back. This is going to be one of the final videos in the series of your practice blueprint project. Hopefully, you have watched the previous videos. You've seen all four where we've gone ahead and practiced drawing parallel lines using 2 points. We've practiced building a basic wall with the bottom plate, the top plate, the double top plate, our headers, our sill plate, and all of the smaller studs or cripples with our king studs next to them are jack studs, sometimes known as tremors, in underneath the headers. And we've got this double top plate end piece, which is the end of a stud, when you're looking at end grain here, moving in an away direction. So the next part of this is going to be to finish drawing what will be the roof of the model that we're going to draw. And in order to do that, we need to have another sheet like this of paper that's blank. You should have 3. So you should have 2 that are identical like this that you've already drawn, if you've done everything correctly. One we did in class, and another one that you did at home for practice. And now we're going to do our roof sheet. So I'm going to move this one aside, and we're going to take 2 blank pieces of paper if you don't have a larger sheet. And we're going to draw a really light, and I do mean very light, line just the weight of the pencil here down the paper. This just is showing me my overlap again. So I'm going to then use that to tape. I'm going to tape the seams together. Okay, and then we can flip this over, and we got a larger drawing paper. So I need to start by putting the title box back on the side of this particular drawing, and that's going to be the same as all of my other title boxes. They all need to match. I'm going to go ahead and start drawing it on this side just because I'm right-handed and my pencil wants to stay in my right hand and the ruler in my left. Then I can flip this thing over and I can have my title box over here with, again, my key page number, our scale box. Then we have a box for the date. I want a 3-inch box for my information and for your information, or in this case it's the client, and the draftsman. And we'll connect these lines here all the way across. Okay, so this is what you should have had from our original assignment Monday, but if not, quickly and easily created here. Now we're going to go ahead and draw in the middle of the paper here, a roof section. So let me just kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. If I pull out this example here, what we're drawing is we're going to be drawing just the top plates here to work from so that we can put the roofing material up on top of that, which in this case is our rafters. Now, you can see here that we're going to do a 4/12 pitch, meaning that for every 12 inches in scale that we come over, we're coming up 4. In this case, we're coming down 4, and then so up 4 over 12, up 4 over 12 will give us that slope. And so to get the whole thing, we really need at least 3.5, 4 inches of clearance. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way, and I get the paper to stay still here without falling on the ground. There it is. So what I need to do is we're going to just take a line, and about 4 inches from the bottom of the paper, I'm going to put a tick mark, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing, keeping myself visually parallel to this line here. Put a tick mark, and then from these two, I'm going to give myself a random line. Okay. And this is a very light line. I'm not going to do this very heavy. I'm hardly holding onto the pencil. It's just a light reference line. So this is going to give me a base horizon to work from. Now I need to decide where I want my center to be. Well, I definitely still want to have on the right side of my drawing a blank space that is the ruler with, I can't use that area because that's going to end up being stapled to my other papers later. So that's dead space. Okay. The next thing that I want to consider is the actual width. So in this drawing that we did, we had a wall that was exactly, well, in this one, I'm exactly 11 and, let me get an accurate measurement. So it looks like I'm 11 and 5/8. Okay. If you are using the exact same paper, you should have the same, basically 11 and 5/8 from outside to outside. If you have a larger paper and we're doing this, you might have actual 12. But it was kind of arbitrary how we came to the size of the wall. So if it's a little bit bigger or smaller, it won't entirely matter. But that just means if you're doing different numbers, you're going to have to do a little bit of math to figure out where your center points are. So if I have 11 and 5/8 and I want to get half of 11 and 5/8, I know half of 10 is 5. Half of 1 is a half, so that's 5.5. And then I have 5/8. Half of 5/8 is 5/16. So if I say that I had the 5.5 plus 5/16, that gives me 5 and 13/16. That's my center point. So if that's my center point, I can kind of move my ruler back and forth till I'm roughly centered in my page. And I'm going to mark just visually where I think I kind of want it, my center line. We're going to go there. So I'm going to mark my center there. I'm going to mark 0 here. And then I'm going to mark the 11 and 5/8 or 5, 11 and 5/8 right there. Okay, so now I have my center point and the two furthest points and a tick mark. Okay, you may have a different length in this overall, in which case you're going to have to redo the math yourself. If you do the same one I'm doing, that's fine. You can practice with this. So I need to actually draw that line in a little bit darker now that I know that that's what I'm keeping. Get my ruler on there. I'm going to go from my tick mark to my tick mark. And now I need to draw my double top plate so that we're going to pretend like basically this is the top of the wall. Okay, and so from here, I want to make my ruler as close to parallel to this small light line out here as I possibly can get it. And we're going to come down, it's not parallel, I want to make sure I'm nice and square. Those two lines are parallel, the ruler and that line. So I can come down 3/16, and I can come down 3/16. I'm going to do the same thing again over here. So I'm eyeballing parallel here, 3/16, 3/16, so that when I put my ruler across here, my line's fairly accurate. This is not about speed, this is about accuracy. 100% about accuracy. Okay, so I'm going to put my pencil on that dot and then we'll swing from there here so that I can then transfer those marks. Go from those dots top to bottom, those dots top to bottom. So now I've got my two plates, which are going to be the double top plate and the top plate of my wall. But remember that this little area right here is actually going to have a stud going in a different direction. So I need to put a mark here for my stud thickness, and then we need to draw an X. And you want to make sure that you do this with your ruler. Don't freehand this. It will be very obvious if you freehand it. You don't want your lines at all crooked. You want them to be sharp. You want them to be crisp. You want them to be straight. You want to make this nice and clean. Okay? Drafting is an art form, and draftsmen make a lot of money to draw, not only understanding the construction of stuff, but the rules of blueprint reading, so that this is kind of like a language. You're writing information on paper that someone else can interpret and then build from it to convey one person's ideas to someone else and into reality. Okay, so this is going to be our wall. Here we have, if this were the rest of it, just so you guys can kind of see it, I'm just going to draw a line here. I'm going to draw a line here. That would be, our wall would be down here somewhere. This is the top of the wall. Top plate, double top plate. These here are the double top plates that are overlapping in a different direction. So from this point, now we need to draw everything else above. And so what I'm going to do first is from the center of our wall assembly, which we said was 5. I'm going to put a little tick mark right there. Okay, which was 5, and that's 12, so that's 13/16. I'm going to measure that from this far line over here, which I'm going to reference from, because I need to get this really straight. So from this line right now on my paper, your measurement could be different, but mine is 6 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to come all the way up here, and I'm going to mark 6 3/4 of an inch. And then from that mark to this mark, I'm going to put a really light line. This is a very, very light line, and I'm just going to put a C over the line. That means that this is a center line for me to work from. The center line is a very important line that will help me figure out what I'm doing later on. So the next thing we need to do in order to get everything laid out, let's just take a piece of wood here for a second. So our rafters are basically this size here. Okay, this is going to equal what would be a 2x6, which is actually 1.5 by 5.5. So this is 1.5 by 5.5 if you were to blow it up into life size. Because of that, I need to get a centerpiece to support it right down the middle. Let's take a look again at one that's done. So I need to have some centerpiece supporting the ridge of the roof in the middle first, so that I can build everything to the ridge. So the first thing that I want to do in order to get this rise and run is I'm going to just measure this real quick. That's 1 and it's like that's a 16th over maybe. I'll tell you what, actually, instead of me measuring this, why don't we work it out together on the other paper? And I won't just copy this one, which I could do. That would be a really easy way to do this. But I'll show you how I come to all of my numbers, how we come up with it. So again, let's start by looking at the scale. We know that in this scale of drawing that we are creating, that 1 inch in real life is going to equal 1/8 inch on paper. Okay, with that being the case, we know also that we want to have a slope of 4 and 12. That means for every 12 inches we move, we are either going up or down by 4 inches. Okay, so we need to convert these things from inches in real life to our scale drawing. So 4/8 is a 1/2 inch, and for 12/8 is, what is that, 1.5 inches? So we have 8/8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yep, that's 1.5 inches. So by 1.5. So what we can do in order to get the general measurement is I'm just going to draw a random line on this paper to get my marks. This is kind of how a carpenter would figure this out in the field. And as a carpenter, That's what I know how to do. So I'm going to just come down 3 inches. I'm going to give myself a random line to play with so we're not erasing a bunch of stuff down low where our final drawing is going to be. And we know that for every 1.5 inches we go over, we're going to come up 1/8 or 4/8 of an inch. Sorry, not 1/8, 4/8. 4/8 is 1/2 inch. So we need 4 inches is equal to 4/8, and 4/8 is the same as 1/2. So I'm going to mark from this straight line. We're just going to give myself a random mark here, and a mark at 1.5 inches, and then from 1.5 inches we would need to come straight up at 1/2 inch. But I don't know that my ruler is straight now. I don't know if that's square or that's square. So a couple things we could do. I'm going to measure to my line over here. Keep everything straight. That's, I go from the 0. Let's just do this from 0. We're going to go 4 3/16. I'll come up here to 4 3/16. Tick mark. And now I can use this mark and this mark to get my ruler square and lined up, but I'm only going to draw my line 1/2 inch tall. That way I can then take from the top of this line to this line my slope, okay? That is my 412 slope. So what do I need to do with that? Well, I need to get this slope now. I need to figure out how to get this angle down here on the wall. It needs to intersect my rafter whenever it's all done on the wall. Let's bring this back into place here. My rafter will need to intersect this end piece right here. Oh, looks like I didn't mark my... Let me just make this a little bit clearer for you guys. So the end of the rafter needs to hook over right here with what we call bird's mouth, this double top plate. And so I like to end this somewhere right around the seam between the top plate and the double top plate, right in here somewhere. Okay, oh, I'm not on the video. Let me do that again here. So I like to have this bird's mouth cut, this little cut inside the rafter here, end somewhere between this top plate and this double top plate. All right, so if we're going to do that, we need to figure out from here where that angle would go up to and then where it's going to intersect with the other side. So we can repeat that general process that I did from this bottom point. Okay, so we know that we're coming over 1.5 inches in either direction. I put a tick mark in both places. We also know that if we create a straight line, so here I've got 1, 2, 2 and 3/4 plus a line, that's 13/16. So I'm just going to put my 2 and 13/16 mark right here. That if I come up 1/2 inch from here, nice and square, and I do the same thing on this side. So on this one I'm going to measure, I got 2 and 11/16 to that tick mark. So I'm going to come over to 2 and 11/16. And all these dots are doing is just they're helping me keep everything square to the paper. I want to keep everything as clean and square as possible. sure I'm still lined up there. I'm going to come up exactly a 1/2 inch. And then from these 2 points, I would be able to draw my lines upward. But again, I can't do that here because I need to come down to this point. So I'm actually going to subtract 3/16. I'm going to subtract 3/16 on this mark. And then I should be able to come to this edge right here, which is 3/16, and just cross where I want to on my framing. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So that doesn't line up to center, does it? Oh, that's because I'm not down here where I need to be. We need to intersect right there. Let's get that drawn in right there. Okay, so this will be the line for the bottom of our rafter. I can erase this extra, and I can erase this little extra bit right there. Once I have this bottom, I know that everything else from underneath here is going to have to be filled in accordingly. So I need to get the rafter, the ridge rafter and everything, lined up with the center of where this is going to stop so that this can be plumb cut instead of cut square. What I mean by plumb cut is, if we look at this other drawing, this cut on this piece here is cut so that it would be vertical to the ground or perfectly plumb, as opposed to cut at an angle like this. And it's done the same way on the tail of the rafter. It's not cut this way. It's actually cut plumb to the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out where the top of this is going to need to be so I can center in my ridge, add this bottom piece, and fill everything else in. So in order to do that, a couple of things we can do. Since you guys already have a stick that's exactly the same size, we can sheet. And you could just lay this stick down right on top of your drawing, okay? Because this is the exact width of what we are drawing. And you could do this. As long as you're using the right stick, you need to make sure it's the bigger one that represents 5.5 inches. Or your measurement's going to be wrong. You're going to have a 2x4 roof. So we could do that. The other thing we could do is we could measure what would be the equivalent of 5.5 inches. So again, with our math over here, we know that if this is 1 inch, if we need 5.5 inches, okay, so 5.5 inches would be the same as 5.5 eighths, which 4 eighths is a 1/2 of an inch. So 5 eighths is 5 eighths of an inch, plus a 1/2 of one of those eighths is a 16th. 5 eighths is automatically 10 sixteenths, plus 1 is 11. So that should be an 11 sixteenths. So if we measure this at an angle here like this, we should see that this is going to come out to 11 sixteenths here, just under the 12 sixteenths mark. And it does. So that method that we just used worked. It was kind of a cheating method. Otherwise, we would just have to draw square to the first line, the distance up, and then draw a straight line. Okay? So because we were able to do this, I can now split the thickness of one piece of wood, which is 3/16. Okay? I'm going to split that right here on top, and that is going to be 1.5 sixteenths and 1.5 sixteenths. So we can just draw that across. And then I'm going to do the same thing down low. 1.5 sixteenths to 1.5 sixteenths. And we're going to connect those two dots. Oh, that's if we were doing a 2x6, excuse me. So this beam here needs to be the next size up of lumber from These are 2x6, so this has to be a 2x8. So again, let's come over here with our math. So if we want 8.5, what's 8.5 eighths? Okay, so 8.5 eighths, if we said 8 eighths is going to be 1 full inch. So 8.5 eighths is going to be 1 1/16. So we're just going to take this line and draw it all the way down to 1 1/16. In fact, when you get into lumber that's 2x8 or 2x10 or 2x12, something bigger than that, it's actually not even 8.5 anymore. It becomes 8 1/4. They take even more material off of it to make it square. So we're just going to call it 1 inch, okay? We're going to round that to 1 inch for the sake of this activity. And I won't get into explaining too much of that, but that's the way that works. So come over here. I'm lining this up from this point and that point there, coming down 1 inch. And then I will draw my 3/16 across to complete that piece of wood. And again, this piece of wood that we're looking at now, we're looking at it from an end grain perspective. So because that's end grain, I want to make sure that I am putting an X through it to show that I am looking at end grain. Okay, then I need to draw this straight down. To do that, I'm just going to get myself as close to parallel with my center line here and with this other beam. We're going to come out here. I can't see my center line on that side when I do it like that, so I do want to stay parallel to the center line. I'm going to make myself a left-handed artist for 2 seconds here, and we'll come back. Just get rid of the center line that's inside there. So now we're going to have our vertical piece. Looks like I got 2 lines here. I didn't draw that very clean, so I'm just cleaning it up. So we've got our ridge beam, we've got our vertical stud here, we've got our rafters coming across, and we need to decide how long our tails are going to be. How long do they hang out past the building? I'm only going to make these because it's such a small paper. I'm only going to make them hang out, let's say a half, 3/4 of an inch. I can go 3/4. So we'll go to 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so we need to extend these down to the point where they run into that 3/4 inch line, and then I can erase everything else. That's the plumb cut there. So we're going to come over 3/4 on this side. I'm 5/16 away. 9/16. So I just got my 2 dots that I'm using as a reference point to get a nice straight line, and then I'm only going to draw the line where I need it in the rafter. Then I can erase the actual rafter part itself. It's extending past the tail. And we're looking pretty good, okay? I'm going to go ahead and pause this video. It's getting pretty long. I don't want to make any video longer than a half an hour. We're at 29 minutes right now. Make sure you're getting to this point right here. I'm going to come back with one more video to finish this up. We'll end up putting in the next video the rest of our vertical support end wall studs. We'll add the ceiling joists. And then we'll come back and just finish up our title block. And then we'll be all finished.